Let me get on the right course. Okay, so last time, if I remember, we went through and we opened a data file and we got information from the data file, correct? Okay, so let's see what we have today. Multi-file programs, variables, references, and file I/O. So I'm going to go over character. Oh, can you hear me now? Oh, can you hear me now? Cool. I think when I switched over to share my screen, it automatically muted me. Last time we went over how to read a data file and get the take a comma separated value or tab delimited file and read the information, correct? Yeah, so I'm going to go over a little bit more about how that get line works, because that's kind of the key to doing that. We saw that, you know, if you have commas or you have tabs, you can't really just use, you know, the CN type of pipe character to, or the CN streaming operator to bring things into variables, because that comma and that tab mess it up. You have to use a get line, and you have to use the delimited format of the get line. So I'm going to go through this presentation, which talks about using character delimiters with get line and how to parse strings. So what we did is we did a get line and we put in our file name, and then if we do this top one, what do we get? So if I do this, what type of thing do I get from the file? Basically, I get an entire line, right? Yeah, one whole line of text. So sometimes that's useful. You're probably going to do one of those. Most of the data files you find out there online are going to have a header row. So you're going to do one of those, and you're going to read in to some string, and you're just going to throw that string away just to get past the header line. Remember, the file basically has a file pointer, and you have to consume everything in the file some way. So often we'll use a get line, just a straight up get line, to get the top line of the program of the file, which is often a header row, and then afterwards we will end up using delimited. What makes this a delimited? Let me do that better. What makes this a delimited getLine is this extra argument here, this parameter at the very end. And what you pass in here is a char. How do I know that's a char? Single quotes. And what this means is that rather than reading to, it's basically like \n is the default delimiter in a getLine, but you can specify a different delimiter. So it's almost like you have that in here. If you put a \n at the end, it would kind of do a getLine the same way. So so what you're going to use that for is, rather than reading all the way to the end of the line, you're going to read to each comma, and then you're going to process each one. So what we did there is we had a loop that was still for each line, but we consumed every single comma, the limited value element in the line. And then at the very end, you'll probably use one of these to get the last element. Why do we need to use just a regular getLine for the last element? So if you imagine a line of data in a text file, there's no comma delimiter. Let me see if I can find one. Hold on a second. Almost there. Okay, so I'm going to open up here's a file, and then I'm going to I'm going to get rid of the word wrap. So this is a budget from the Albuquerque Open Data Project. And first of all, if you're doing this with, if you're working with a file in C++, you probably want to convert to UTF-8. I'm not going to do this one because this is another project, which depends on it being the way it is. But you would convert to UTF-8. And then the other thing is, if you click on Show Symbol, Show All Characters, you can see this one's tab delimited. So rather than comma, it would be a \T. And you notice that here you can see there's the tab, but this last one doesn't have a tab at the end. So in order to consume this last one, what you're going to have to do is just a straight up regular getLine that will stop at the line feed. Does that make sense? Yeah, so delimited, 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 delimited all the way down, and then you do one final getLine without a delimited. Now, when you do a getLine, what type of value do you get back every single time? Can you get an int out of a getLine? It's always a string. Getlines get strings. So even though there's numbers in here, you can't, you could try, using, your pipe characters, these things to read that in. But if you did that, you would still have the comma sitting there, and then you'd have to consume that some way, and it just gets kind of weird. So generally when you're reading text files, easier to use a get line, and then what you do, and so here you can see this one's comma separated, and so it uses a comma. If you didn't have a comma, you would be using \T. And then when you get to the end, there's no comma. So it's got to use a full get line to read this thing in. Yeah, and so the first one would grab this element right here. So since we're getting everything in as a string, we need to do some string manipulation. And normally you can just do an STOS or an STOD or an STOI command to convert from string to int. There's also some other tools depending on how your data is. You might find that you need to get a piece of data inside of that string, and you have these functions like substring and find, which will actually find things in inside of a string. So I'm going to I have some links here. They're probably good ones to go grab. And what substring does is it will find the position of one string inside of another. And so here we say we think in generalities, but we live in details. So they declared this string, and then string 2 says, give me the substring of 3, 5. And the way the substring command works is the first parameter is the index of the character you want to start at. And remember, so is W going to be 0 or 1? 0. Everything's 0 based in programming for the most part. So W is 0, E is 2, space is 3. Let me start over again. 0, W is 0, E is 1, the space is 2, and the T is 3. So that's the first element that we're going to grab here. And then we want 5 characters. So THINK, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 characters will give us think. So string 2 will end up with think. Does that make sense? So if let's say that the thing you wanted was inside of a piece of text between two delimiters, you could go further in and grab just that piece with the substring command. The other thing you can use is the find. In this one, we're going to find the location of live. And notice that they called it a size t. Just think of a size t as like an integer, but it's a non-zero. It's a non-negative integer. So the size t position will get to the position of live. Well, where's live? It's right here. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32. I think it's going to be 33. I might have miscounted. But that will return 33. You could then use substrate. So you could actually also, let's say you know that there's a character in that string that you wanted. You could go find that with the find, and then you could go from there to the end or take X number of characters and you could get that piece out of there. So between substring and find, you can also parse within that string a little bit too. Does that make sense? So those are useful functions, and those are good links to look at. And here's the link to the find. It kind of showed it in that other one too. I like C++.com. I think I like documentation sites which are better or easier to read and kind of give good examples. I think it's a little better than Microsoft's documentation for when you're kind of starting out. Microsoft documentation isn't always as clear and doesn't give as easy an example to understand as these. Again, remember, you're going to see in all these examples, you're going to see standard : because they don't put using standard at the top. If you had using standard, all this would go away. If that's hard for you to read through, you might just copy it out, put it in a program, and delete these things, and then you probably can see it a little better. After a while of reading this, you can just you can say, okay, you can kind of see past that. This is just saying, hey, this is a string. This is a string. And then this is the find. There are two needles. I think we saw this example before. I'm going through some of this again because it's sometimes useful to repeat some stuff. And I want to make sure I cover it. So the find basically, you say, give me find this string inside of that string. So str.find string 2 will give the position of string 2 in str. Let's see, did they do it the same way? Yeah, they did the same way. So those are those two functions. Those are very useful for digging things out within a string, even after you pull them out of the delimiter. You probably won't, depending on if you pick a good file, you probably won't have to do that, but sometimes you may need to. So once we pull out the thing that we want, and it's a string, we next need to convert it to a number. And ATOI and ATOF, those we saw before, those convert characters to numbers, and you need to pass in a character array to them. Let me bring up. So, given this, convert buffer into a float and assign it into a variable called myFloat. So I've got Socrative open. Give that a try. So we made a buffer, a character array. We used a get line to get the user's input. And now we want to convert buffer into a variable called myFloat. Okay, I'm waiting for Visual Studio to spin up so I can demo the answer. Rather than me trying to write with my mouse on the screen. So we have our buffer variable, 10 characters, and we're going to get line cin into buffer 10. Oh. Mixing and matching stuff. Okay. Now you don't need to turn this one, and we may do a demo later that's turning. I just want to be able to. This would normally be what I'd be writing on the board. So, so I've got my get line, and I need to convert this into, and I want it to be a float because we want to make a floating point number. And my float is equal to, and this is a character array. So because character array, it's A to F. So character A is for the character array, F is for the float, and then I put in buffer. And just to prove that we got that, I'm going to put in some couts here. Cout. Enter a float. And cout. Square of your number is my float times my float. So I'm just putting a little extra in there so that we have something. And so the key is, when you see ATOF or STOF or ATOD, if you look at the character before, they are separate functions, but the way they've named them is A means it's a character, S means it's a string. So let me see what that does. And so if I put 5.2, square of your number is 27.4. That seems about right. 5 times 5 is 25, and then we put the 0.2 and etc. So does that make sense? So while we're on that, let's say that instead of, so I'm going to make another example down here. Let's say I have a string called text, and I'm bringing that in, or I'll call it numstr, so a number string. And then I'm going to do the same stuff. Notice the difference. The structure is a little different for a character array versus a string. So how do I convert num string into my other float? And I'll throw up another Socrative so that we can do it there. So this is a float. So string, because this is, I'm converting from a string to a float. And notice the IntelliSense comes up. Look at all the things you can convert over to. And if you hover over them, they don't really give good, other languages have a little better IntelliSense. But the ones you're primarily going to use are STOI, STOF, STOD. And if it was AT, you can see you get all those conversion functions too. I'm going to do STOF for float. You also have STOD for double, but this is a float. And we're going to pass in numstr, and that will convert that over. And then I should be able to do the same thing here. Oh. Try that again. So 5.2 for the first one, I'll put 5.2 again. And you can see they both work the same. But this one came in as a string, and this one came in as a character array. And the big thing is that while you're doing this program 7, you may be using probably STOF. I would probably stay and keep everything as strings. If you found a reason to do a character buffer, you could do that. But really, you can kind of do everything you need for this program, probably with strings instead of character arrays, but we want to show you both. Does that make sense? Okay, let me get back to my presentation. Let's say that we want to convert from a char array to a string. I mean, from a string to a char array. You can use the cstring method, and that will convert from a string to a character array. Why do we have an asterisk here? Yes, realize a character array is really just a pointer to a character. And so if you, for some reason, need to convert from you have a string and you say, there's something I want to do with, I want to treat it as a character array for some reason. Yep, arrays are pointers. You can use this code, the C underscore string, and maybe what it is, you're working with a library, and that library is written a long time ago, and they used character arrays. So you can use this to do that conversion. Constant char asterisk character message is equal to the name of your string dot C string, and you'll get that pointer pulled out. And so you could use ATOF and ATOI with strings. You would use this approach, ATOF. You'd C string your string, and you could use ATOF, but we don't need to use that. ATOS basically does that for us. But there was a time you had to do it that way. And so we're going to primarily be using STOI, STOF, and STOD. STOD converts to a double. And so here's an example of converting some text to an integer, and down here some text to a float. Yeah, so and the reason why we have to show you that is because that was implemented with C++11. So the old stuff is still there. So let's try this one. In Socrative, you've got a question open there right now. Let's try to write the code to declare a variable to store a person's age. You pick which is the best type for someone's age, and then write the code to convert a string variable called age string into a number. And let's just say that after a certain point we don't say we're like 3.5 years old usually. And so you're going to write a code to convert a string variable called age_str into a number and store that value into that variable. So go ahead and try to write that code. So we could declare a variable called age str, and then yeah, we could see out enter age, and CN that into well, we'll use a get line. And then, so we got this age string, and then we want to make an int. Age is equal to an stoi. And see out age. And it works. Just to prove that it's math. Make sense? So not too hard, just different functions to do conversions. And so let's see. I don't know what that is. We'll set that off to the side and hope it doesn't do anything terrible. And so I think what we'll do is take a 10-minute break, and then we'll play around with the data file again. And I'm going to demonstrate pulling the file from the internet, and then and see some of the issues with that. So let's take a break and reconvene in about 10 minutes. Okay, so this is not a formal demonstration on anything here. You don't have to turn this in, but I thought I would go through and demonstrate getting some data from a website. So why won't you go out of my way? Let's see. Everyone still see my screen? Okay. I'm going to go to Albuquerque Open Data. Everyone see Albuquerque Open Data on the screen? I just want to make sure you're looking at the right screen. Okay, so I'm going to here to find a data file. And let's see, I want to find one that you all might not use because if I grab this one, then he can't use this one. If it's rates, main permits. Well, I'll pull this one down, and then we'll do a demo with a different file so that. So I'm going to use the Albuquerque budget. So I'm going to pull down this CSV file, and if I open this up, when you download it, you might be tempted to open it up in Excel. That's not going to help us a lot with our files necessarily, because Excel kind of formats it all, and you can see everything very nicely, but we need more information about how the file is set up. So I'm going to go to my downloads folder. And I see the file here. I'm going to open my solution, or actually I want to open my project, and I'm going to open my File Explorer. And so I'm going to use this file, I'm going to drag it into my project folder. And you could potentially just drag it straight into here, but I find it a good idea to just bring it to the, right click, open folder in File Explorer, get this folder open, and then make sure that I know that it's in this directory. And then what I can do is, there's this button that says Show All Files. And you can see now it's displayed here. What I'm going to do is include in project. That now makes it part of the project, and then I can turn off Show All Files, and I should see it down here. Let me repeat that. So I'm going to delete that and do it again. So I downloaded a file. I right-click on the project, open the folder in File Explorer, copy this over to, this is the folder where my project is located. Once it's here, then I go and Show All Files, right-click, include that file in the project. And then close that. So I'm going to leave this folder open, directory open. I might need to use it later. And I'm going to start off very simply, create an ifstream object. And then let me see, infile.open. And I don't want to type that whole thing, so I'm just going to... Actually, I wonder if I can just drag this. Nope, it won't let me. So I'm just going to do... If I do rename, I can actually just copy that name and then put this in here. For now, eventually this will be a file, and I'll be returning false, but I'll just put... Actually, I'll just do that now. It should be fine. And then what I'm going to do is... So I'm going to do my get line, and then I'm just going to see out a line. So to start off with, I'm just going to do the standard file input and just see if I can read the file. This is what I call, kind of programming just a piece at a time, and eventually this is going to be put into a function, but for now, I'm just going to run this and see if I can get this to function. And it looks like I'm successfully reading the file. This is a long file, by the way. But it's kind of weird. For one thing, it's a really long file. And if you encounter this, and it's taking you forever to test it, I'm going to show you a strategy to deal with that. What I'm going to suggest you do is, if you encounter that, I'm going to edit this with Notepad++. And I'm going to say, hey, you know, if I can get this to work with 100 lines, that's probably enough. So I'm going to just go and cut this. I've got that the other copy. So I'm just going to delete this file and bring it down to 100. And I'll get it to work with 100, and then later on, I will make this work with a bigger file. Does that make sense? So I've shortened this file, and now I'm going to run this program again, and now it stops. What's weird about the way this is displaying? The spacing. Does anyone think they can? So what do we suppose that might be? Does anyone have any theories about why we're getting this extra space in here? Formatting, yeah, that's a good direction. Let me show you, and this is not obvious, and you'll very often encounter this. What the problem is that this is encoded as UCS2. That means it's Unicode. Does anyone know the difference between Unicode and ASCII code? Yeah, you're right on it. We need to convert it to UTF-8. So Unicode is actually a 16-bit character. ASCII is an 8-bit character. ASCII, and so Unicode is set up in order to allow multiple character sets from around the world to set up. So a lot of files are in that format. C++ was developed before they had Unicode, so we have to do some other stuff to get Unicode to work, and I probably need to set up a tutorial for that. But for now, what we're going to do is I'm going to recommend that if you get a file that's in like this, where you get extra spaces, come up here and convert it to UTF-8. And then I'm going to save that, and then I'm going to run. So all I did was I went to encoding, convert to UTF-8, and now I'm going to run this again. Does that look better? Now, just looking at this, what do you suppose the delimiter is? You can actually figure it out just by looking at this output right now. Are we comma separated value, or are we separated by something else? We're tab. Someone tell me what the character representation of tab is in C++. \T. Very good. So we need to read in a delimited manner to using \T. And if we look at this, let's say that what we want is we want this column here at the top. We want the item, and what we want to find is the largest budget item. And the way this file is set up is this last number here is the budget. And so we want to see maybe the the department here, the division ID, and then the amount. So we don't want to show all this stuff. We just want to show that. So what I have to do is, first of all, I've got this header line here. And if I look at the original file, I want to consume this header line and I don't want to show it. So how can I get rid of this header line? Get line into a string I don't use. Very good. So if I do this right, then this will disappear. So I could just do one of these. I'm going to do that before I get in my while loop so that I consume it and get rid of it. And I recommend putting a comment in here, get rid of. And now if I look at the top, I can see all I have is data. Does that make sense? So good. I've got that. Now what I want to do is I want to just get the columns I need. So how can I do that? Well, I need to now start reading this in a delimited way. And so I'm going to look at my file and I need to read the first one for sure just to see if I've got something. And it's tab delimited. So just to kind of see how that works, I'm going to comment this out for a second. And I'm going to get the next one, get line in file. And then I'm going to make another variable for this, string element. I'm going to read it into element. And then what do I put next in order to just read to the tab? Very good. I want the single quote. Why a single quote? It's a char. Is this one character or two characters? But I've got a slash and a T. How come it's not one? How come it isn't two? Sorry. That's the escape. It's called an escape sequence. Basically, there are some characters that you don't, they don't have like a visual representation, as it were. So to make it possible to kind of type it into things, they create this. They create these. They have this. They have this string, or this backslash, and they use that just to kind of be able to have something that you can type. Otherwise, how would you specify that? So that's why you have this backslash T. So this is actually one character, and it's the tab character. And how do we know that we need to use a tab rather than the comma? And I know some of this is repetitive, but I just want to make sure everyone's got this, is if you look in if you use Notepad++, it'll show the tabs as this. It's hard to see on the screen, but it'll show it as this arrow. Can anyone see that arrow? Yeah, that's why I like using Notepad++. And, you know, by doing View, Show Symbol, and Show All Characters, I can really analyze how this file is set up. So I know that it's a T, so this one's going to go to a tab. I actually like tab delimited better than comma delimited. I think it actually works better. It's easier to deal with for a number of reasons. So now that I know that I can do that, let me just run that, and I'll put a C out after this element. And yeah, I get 2018. So reading this line skipped the first line, and then I got 2018, so I managed to get the first element. Does that make sense? So what I need to do next is really kind of incorporate this code here into this while statement. So I'm going to uncomment this, comment that one out, and so I'm going to use this get line in place of this one. And so I've got to, now what you have to do is you have to look at your file and see what columns you have. And I'm going to count up the number of columns. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I've got 13 columns. So what I might do is I'm going to read that one. And 1, 2, oh. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And then 12, and then that would be 13. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. What should I do with this last one? Let me see if I can show. Yeah, but use /n. Notice that the last one here, 51720, has a line feed at the end. It doesn't have a tab. So if I can't read to the tab for here, because what it'll do is it'll just roll back around to the beginning and pick up the tab on the next line. I need to change this last one to here. And I think I'm going to just put these in between and just see if I get what I'm expecting. And I don't want these end lines. Actually, I should have gotten rid of that beforehand. I should have done this. I'm going to put a space in between. I'll put a dash. Sometimes we figure things out after we type in a massive amount of code. Anyone experienced that before? And you don't have to follow me on this part completely. I'm just using it to kind of walk through what's going on, just to demonstrate stuff. And we'll put an end line in the last one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read an element, display a dash, read an element, and display a dash, and see what do I get. Now, if this works out well, what should happen is after the amounts, I should get carriage returns at the right points. So it went through, came through here, supplies 40, and so I'm going to compare this just to see if I'm getting, so 5172 should have been the last thing printed on here. I'll start off at the top. Yep, employee benefits 5172. And it looks like I'm getting some weird things here. Overtime 3157. I don't think I have the right numbers. Because on the next line, I got 2018 proposed, 7, culture department. So I may have miscounted. So I'm going to do a different test. I'm going to not display everything. I just want to make sure I'm getting the last line correct. So I can do that by just printing this last element and seeing what I get. That's weird. Oh, let me get rid of this. No, that was correct. We get rid of the header file, and then we go through, we get each of those lines to the tab. I should just be displaying one element here. But it's reading all the way to the line. So I think what's happening here is it's reading one extra, and then it's running through, and with this get line, it's getting a whole line. So I'm going to delete one of these and see if that fixes it. There we go. So I was reading one extra. That may seem like magic, but does that make sense to everybody what was going on there? Is reading over one extra line, and then that meant that when it did the get line, it got the whole extra line rather than just getting. And so I was reading every other line, and then I was, but now I'm getting the last element, 51723155566270. So I'm getting the last element okay. So you're going to encounter things like that where you're going to get weird results, and you kind of have to just. I'm only doing one get line. The others are tab delimited. And so in this case, I put in, I counted it up and put my best guess. I did one get line for every element. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And that's the 13th. So I had 14, and it was, and for that final, oh, wait, hold on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So there's 12 columns in this one. And so I was reading 13, which the 13th one was actually reading the whole next line as its input. So I had to reduce it by 1. So let's, now that we've got that structure, we have the ability to, we're reading all the lines. The next thing is how, I just want to get the certain columns, and the column I want is maybe 0. So look, 1, 2, 3, 4. I want to. Yeah, I want the department. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. There's the fifth one. I'm going to see out what this one is. And a lot of this is you just kind of keep running through this and see if you're getting what you want. Yep, it looks like I'm getting the department and then the amount. And then what I might want is so does that make sense what I'm doing here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 5, 6, 7. And look, then what would be interesting? 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Maybe I want number 14. I don't have 14. So I want the one back from the main. So I want this one too. See out. I can just use the same thing. So now I've got the department and what their insurance comp and then the amount. So now I've got the things that I want. And I'm going to turn this into a function. So I'm going to add in my source files a new item. And by the way, for part 1, that's basically what we just did there. That's part 1 of the program. So make my functions.cpp, make my header file. I might keep rename functions.h. Put my include guard in place. And I'm going to take this code here that I've got pretty much the entire thing in main here right now. And we'll turn this into a function. Bool get data from file. I need to do some parameters, but I'll get the parameters in later. And this will turn into a return true, and this will turn into a return false. That's good. And then I need some includes. Let's see, I need fstream. And then string. And then IOStream, I guess. So I brought that over. And I'm going to bring these back as arrays. So I'm going to bring them back as 3 arrays. 2 of them are string, one of them is, say, double. So string array let's see, what will they be? They'll be department, string item, and string amount. I mean double amount. So that's what I want to get out of here, and then I'm going to need the count. And so I'm going to start off my while, and I'm going to make count equals 0 to begin with. And then what I'm going to do is I'm not going to see out. Instead, here I'm going to say for my arrays, department index count is equal to element. And then down here, the array is item. So that will be item of count is equal to element. And then down here, it will be amount of count is equal to element. And then I'm going to increment count. Okay, so we have a problem here. Why am I getting an error right now? Why can't I set element into amount? Element is a string and amount is an array of double. How do I fix that? STOD. So I'm going to use this is why that learning how to convert those. And it depends on your data. It might be STOF, might be STOI, whatever numeric stuff you're bringing in. You might need that. So now, once this is over, will count be the correct value? It should. In fact, it should show the length and number of items. It will be, because we increment each time. It starts off as 0. When we get the first line, now its value will be 1. Then the next line of its value will be 2. So this should be correct for the number of elements in this. So what's wrong with the way I'm passing in int? We want this to come back out. How should I really do that? A reference. Last time we did this as a pointer. This time I'm going to do it as a reference just to show you how much easier it is. I'm just going to put an ampersand sign here. This says this is a reference to an int, not the int itself. The nice thing about that is I don't have to change anything in here. So actually references are easier in some cases. So this will be a reference. Does that make sense? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this, put it in my .h, Do I need a using string? Yeah. So now I've got that. And then I'm going to use this in main. I can delete this now because I have a function. Main will just be return 0. I need array, so string item, and I don't know how many are going to be here. Eventually I know there's going to be quite a bit, so I'm going to make these actually pretty big arrays. String department. Thank you very much. See, I make the same mistakes. And because it returns, I'm just going to call it within an if statement, actually. If, oh, I need my, include. Get data from file and then pass in my, let's see, department, item, amount, and count. Programming. It's like they want you to spell stuff correctly. So picky. Okay, so we're going to call this function. If it returns true, it worked okay. And then I'm just going to see if I got, initially I'm just going to see if I got everything. Department index I. Item index I. And then amount index I. So this will just, if I get it, it should loop through and display everything. It worked. So we can see now I was able to pass in these arrays, pass in count. I got back the count, was able to loop through them, and then get my values. So I'll pause there, and next time what we're going to do is then figure out, we need a function that basically says, well, yeah. We're going to make a function that's, that returns the that and probably just send back an index int. It looked like this. Actually, I might be able to do this. We've got about 2 minutes. Well, it will just be this. That will be what. So that this function should find the largest, and I will go over it in more detail next time. But what you end up doing then is doing something like this. And that code finds the largest one, which is the aviation department. So we'll go over this in a little bit more detail next time. But that, and the way this works, but that is essentially how it's pretty similar to what your program is going to do, except that you're going to do 3 of these questions. So that's all I've got. See you next time.